Step into analysis, please.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing Westworld, but with a little bit of a twist. This will be the last video before the Season 4 finale, so I wanted to open up the dialogue and feature more of the comments and questions that you, the community, wanted to be addressed. This will certainly contain my final thoughts and theories before we are waiting another X amount of years before this incredible show returns. But yeah, the focus will definitely be for all of you. Before we start our pre-finale overthinking of an HBO show about robots, I wanted to quickly ask that you hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit a huge milestone over here with 50,000 subscribers before the end of the Westworld season, and we're so close. We have days to do it. I think that we can do it. We're so close. We can do this, please. Much love to everybody that has got me here, and to return the favor, this video is definitely for you. Now, the first comment comes from History Eraser Button, who I believe has been here since Season 1 or Season 2. They believe the last shot of Westworld will be Dolores waking up and realizing that it was all a dream, and then she will paint. Unfortunately, I had to ban them for this comment, so let's go to the next one. Okay, be objective. This would be quite the twist, and while I don't think that they would be so bold as to take us all the way back to the beginning, meaning that, like, you know, nothing happened, I definitely think there is an observable cycle of suffering that could be used in a similar way. Now that the humans are in the same position as the hosts, if the next iteration comes and the humans ever break free in a violent way instead of a way that makes everybody realize, hey, maybe we should just be nice to each other, we could once again see Dolores painting that picture in the park, enslaved by humanity. I think Frankie represents the next generation that will have to break this cycle, and we already know that she is not a massive fan of hosts. Her dialogue with Bernard shows that she considers their emotions somehow lesser than her own, and her being convinced for her entire life that a host stole her daddy away undoubtedly did some damage. However, I think that there is a bigger picture at play here. I think they have been building this maybe not so subtle love story between Caleb and Maeve under our noses. I rewatched the season last night with the consideration of Maeve and Caleb being a couple during the 7-year gap, and it is pretty obvious that that is what the showrunners are building towards. Every line of dialogue feels like two exes beating around the bush of their unresolved trauma and feelings toward each other. Caleb in a dire state, even flat out demanding to know why she left him because that's the thing that's on his mind, not, you know, him bleeding out. There are moments of inside jokes and drink orders and even jealousy when another host offers to get Caleb dressed. And I mean, this look, I mean, come on. It appears to me that they're trying to show us the first genuine host-human relationship, you know, actual real love between these two. And I think that this is going to build to something more. Frankie does not have a mother. Maeve's daughter is locked away in an ivory tower. I think the importance of all of that is that she will be exposed to the very real love that can exist in hosts that we know Maeve is capable of because of her daughter. And maybe this love will be the point in which this cycle ends, and maybe Dolores won't ever have to wake up in a park ever again, because instead of showing the humans more hatred, they showed them love. And I think that that is the most beautiful message that you could share that also addresses the generational trauma that I think that they're highlighting in a very, very poetic way. Next question comes from Eric Reese. You mentioned the simulation inside of a simulation video previously, and I would love for you to dive more into that. So this is something of an open-ended theory that can basically be described as, because we know Rehoboam and the Forge and the Cradle and potentially whatever technology that Hale used to create the hosts exists, any number of things that we're watching could be simulated. Also, because of how hosts perceive the world, this entire thing could be Bernard remembering how this was happening a million years in the future, telling his host human children about the glory days. So it's a pretty big umbrella of what could possibly happen. In Season 3, this was discussed with Rehoboam with the thought that maybe Dolores had already used the system to understand what she needed to do in order to win. So while we thought we were watching the simulated future that Sirach and Rehoboam had planned, it was actually another sim working in favor of our protagonists. Now, do I think in some way this could still happen? Of course. Of course I do. This show has created such a vast world of possibility that if Ford comes back during the finale and reveals that he was actually pulling the strings in some kind of manner, I could go back and piece together all of the evidence that could show exactly how that was possible. It's one of the best and worst things about theory crafting for this show. I think after the last episode, we saw a working Sublime with assumingly a working door inside of the Sublime, and the implications of that are massive. And you could say, well, yeah, but what about the black bars? And that is an entirely fair point. However, with Maeve, it was only revealed to the audience that she was in a simulation after Maeve was made aware of it. So perhaps the black bars are when the hosts specifically realize that they are inside of a sim, and this could be used once again to establish this pattern outright and not betray the kind of soft rules that they have in place about how this works. It's another thing entirely if the audience would enjoy that, but I do think it's possible. I also think the black bars happening over this transition was a bright red flag to me that showed, even if subtly, this storyline that we're now perceiving to be reality could in fact be a simulation run by Bernard, because again, it's in a transitional period. After all, how does he come to realize that he's in a simulation when he dies and starts again? Is he just living the plot of Groundhog's Day? Like, how the mind actually works inside of the Sublime is still largely unexplored. Right now, it's more closer to a slideshow that you can watch what happens instead of a world where you feel that your existence is genuine. For Bernard's purpose, this wouldn't matter, but for the other hosts, would they really want this omniscient existence instead of like one where they felt most like themselves? Even after awakening, wouldn't you want your world to feel genuine instead of like a manifestation that you created? I would love if this entire season was a simulation of Bernard's and it ends with that single path that works. In the last minute, he wakes up and Stubbs says,
I brought you a souvenir. Little snow globe from the Sublime.
This would enable them to do this massive reveal without it feeling bad for the audience, because we then know everything that happens and understand how Bernard's time in the Sublime actually felt like, instead of just what happened. And this would carry massive weight, and season 5 would just need to start in the aftermath of this great journey that we watched unfold. The happenstance of it being simulated or in reality wouldn't actually matter, because boom, we learn that it's simulated at the same time we learn that it's happening in reality, and this story continues in reality. And from the perspective of the person who just binged this entire season, mind blown. I mean, absolutely mind blown. At first, I was kind of like hesitant about this theory, but I think that there is definitely a way that they could pull off everything that we've been watching being a simulation without it feeling bad. So yeah, those are my thoughts about simulation inside of a simulation. I think it's possible, but oh boy, would it be daring. While we're on the topic of this 23-year gap in which Stubbs does nothing but watch a man sleep, a few things feel odd about this. First, at the end of season 3, we're kind of given the implication that Stubbs was depending on Bernard. Like, he could not repair himself and was probably going to, rot in the interim. After reviewing the exact scene, they use the word literally to literally mean that he is going to be left rotting without Bernard's intervention. But this clearly doesn't happen. And the implication aside, we also have this line from Stubbs.
You were the one that told me not to disturb anything.
This never actually happened, and I would play the entire scene for you if I could, but I just rewatched it to confirm. They get to the hotel, they ice this soon-to-be dead man, talk about Dolores being dead, the end of the world, the Sublime, the vague description of this plan, and finally, Bernard escapes into the land before time, with Stubbs being curious about what he's seeing. I think I pointed this out in my episode 1 breakdown for the season, but I just want to highlight, this not only did not happen, this could have never happened. The entire hotel interaction happens on screen. So my point is, there is room for a big reveal relating to this timeline. Hale perhaps found them scanning the key without Bernard being affected, or replaced Stubbs with a host of, their own, explaining exactly how this could have been Stubbs that was the traitor in the one timeline that Bernard observed. It would be a pretty neat twist, but let's move on. Next question comes from Henry Lim, who has been a subscriber for about 3 weeks. Welcome to the community. Henry asks, why do some have the earrings on their left ear and others don't? So this was a question that I've seen quite a few times on Twitter, on my comments, and on Reddit. It never really struck me as anything odd, but I wanted to check just to confirm. I believe that this was them showing just a super cool future Bluetooth accessory, what that could look like. I did compare it to everybody else, and the only other person I really saw having one was her boss. At first, I thought maybe this could be them showing us that they're all connected to Christina, with my thought still being currently after episode 7 that she is some form of system to control humanity, and perhaps each of the characters represent part of her consciousness, keeping her in check. or something that she has to, fight back against. If that was the case, having all of them wear this Bluetooth thing would be a really cool, neat little hint. But Teddy doesn't wear one, and Maya answers the cell phone by putting it to her ear. So I think it might just genuinely be a cool costume design or a what Bluetooth could look like in the future moment. And I would absolutely rock this Bluetooth. Next, we have Master Cirque, who has been a subscriber since season 2. Thank you for being here, buddy. They would like to know the most liked theory from the comment section and my thoughts. I don't really know if I'm doing this right. I did my best. I tried going through the comments to see which theories really stood out to me. This one popped out to me about if 2 hosts could have a baby. This has been maybe not directly, but maybe implicitly discussed since season 1. I mean, I've seen conversations since season 1 about this exact thing. I think the ways in which they could create offspring is far beyond the ways that we could, meaning digitally, or at one point, I even imagined that they might show a scene where Hale was in the simulation that, they alluded to, having hundreds of interviews with like similar to how Dolores and Bernard were in the cradle, to really show how much she cared about her quote unquote children. But I guess that's really not needed, though I do think it would add more depth to Hale as a character and really what she's gone through to create these beings. If you're curious if a host could produce semen and eggs, I don't see why not, seeing as how they're creating flies that turn people into hosts. Entirely possible, sure. The only real issue that I can think of is how the DNA sequence would be created. But I mean, yeah, why not, right? It's entirely possible. It wouldn't have a control unit, but hey, I mean, maybe that's how humans were created in the first place. Evolution be damned, and maybe these are the old gods, full cycle. I mean, there's room there. Also, in this top comment train of thought, I do want to highlight every comment that pointed out Christina was derived from the name Christ, also known as Jesus, also known as Jesus H. Christ, Savior of Man in some published novels. This was always pretty funny to me because my name is Chris, and I have been aware of the origin of my name for many, many years. I do think her name was picked for a reason, but I guess if I were to acknowledge that, I would have to acknowledge my own foreshadowing in life, and the thought of that fourth wall breaking self-reflection isn't one that I'm ready for. The baptism is definitely on par with the name and what they're trying to do, and as a derivative of Jesus, praise be. Next, we have Modnarer, someone who has been incredibly active in the comment section this season, subscribed over on Patreon as well, and subscribed a few years ago after finding my Pump Up the Volume video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. They ask, do you feel like the showrunners took to heart the criticisms of season 3 because they went back to the time jumps and confusing things that we liked about earlier seasons? To that I say, I don't even know if the showrunners know I exist, or if any comment has ever reached their periphery about our opinion about this show. I would love nothing more than to be a janitor at the HBO Black site that they're working on the show out of, and just stroll past their office, pick up the trash, and throw out some hey what ifs, and then go about my janitorial day. Jokes aside, I don't really know. I don't think that they should care. I would love nothing more than for them to do what they feel like they have to do in order to tell the story that they wish to tell. And I guess what I want is complete control for artists to tell their story and to tell the story that makes them happiest at the end of the day. And I hope that they execute on that final season. And we have just the complete story that they, from the start, wanted to tell. And this was a decade of their life that they dedicated to us. And I will forever love them for that, right? I think that's art. That's beauty. Next, we have Romaggio, who is also a new subscriber, asking, why the heck did Bernard open the door? So, I'm not sure, but it certainly relates to his plan to save one tiny part of the world that he intends to save, and it most certainly exists in Pearl form. Someone is going to be uploaded or downloaded from this thing using the already built Pearl reader at this control site. That, also, this platform is shaped like a hexagon, which, very important shape this season. I still don't know exactly why. Last season it was triangles. This season it's hexagons, which is the best shape, objectively the best shape. Next, it's me, Mickey, asking about the music at the start of each breakdown. That is from the copyright-free music library here on YouTube, and I will attach a link to the description to, so y'all can listen to that. I heard it when I was preparing how I wanted the format for my content to exist this year, and I knew right away I could mix it with a little speaking part from Bernard to make it my own thing, and it has kind of the vibe that I want. So I'm really glad that y'all like it. Next, this one comes from me, a subscriber for more than a decade, terrible friend. I just wanted to point out this interaction once again after my last rewatch. Stubbs asks if the key to saving the world was standing in this parking lot. He replies, nope, she is. At the time, it was just meant, hey, this is where the plan gets really good, let's get it. But now, with everything that happened, and my thoughts from earlier about the next generation really being what this fight is about, I think Frankie is the key to preserving that one tiny thing that he and Maeve are hoping to preserve, making this interaction mean much more than it did. And I think on rewatch, we're going to go, oh, wow, it was right in front of us this whole time. Let's go. Privo asks on Twitter about a theory that they found on Reddit. Now, I am completely, I don't know, I'll be honest. This blew my mind at first, and after a bit, I started having doubts. It may be nothing, or it may prove that this is the greatest show of all time, but it does use brief, really spoilery footage taken from the filming set. I'm sorry, not really spoilery. It's kind of like, I don't want to say anything. If you don't want this, if you don't want to know anything that happens from the scope, outside of the scope of the show, skip to the time listed on the screen. Hopefully I edit that correctly. The theory points out this video of Dolores walking in her classic blue dress, with the end of it being wet. An absolute big-brained Bernard found that in season 2, when Dolores was recreating Bernard, the tail of her dress was wet. I really can't remember if we discussed that here, but I do remember seeing this and not really knowing how it was connected to anything. In the yet-to-be-released footage, last chance for spoilers here, the tail of her dress is wet in a very similar way, hinting that some absolutely wild things could still be happening from season 2. It might be evidence for a simulation theory. It might be, evidence that this was all, someone really planning this out and they're still at the park kind of thing. It would be absolutely wild to see the significance of this. But if I'm honest, I'm not exactly sure if this means anything, but I do like a good theory. The street is wet. It is very possible that this is just a common occurrence with, dress wearers. So I think that's where I'm going to end this. I do want to say thank you for Privo for pointing this out. Such a wild thought. And all props to Indy 1984 for noticing this connection. Even if it means nothing, this is such wild attention to detail, and I love it. Staying on the Reddit platform for the last little bit, I do want to thank I Deleted My Account 04 for their post hyping me up over on the Westworld subreddit, as well as everyone who commented on that post. Nobody sent this to me. I was scrolling through Reddit and I saw my name and I teared up reading all of the love that was coming my way. It was incredibly validating and it makes me feel like I'm really doing something special here. And I guess I just I want you to know how much that meant to me. Not many people take the time out of their day to hype other people on the internet up, and you did, and I think that you deserve all of the praise for that kindness. You asked about Rehoboam and my editing process. Editing-wise, I feel like I could probably make a whole video about that process, and maybe I should do that for Patreon. Would that be fun or informative for y'all? I assure you that a lot goes into it, and I think that does translate to the finished product. But hey, when it's time for a new video, that process can look like a mountain. And I constantly have to remind myself that I am simply taking the next step in front of me and not be overwhelmed by the complete journey. Let me know if that's something that you would like to see at all. As for Rehoboam, I think it's pretty likely that there is still more to the strategy engine story yet. We did learn after the events of season 3 that Maeve and Caleb had to track down the remote Rehoboam sites, which was kind of like glossed over. But what's interesting is that the big reveal of the finale was that Rehoboam was connected to Sirach, actively issuing him commands so that he had a very real influence in the world and could have done, like Rehoboam itself could have done countless things to maintain power. But let's assume that he doesn't, because maybe he doesn't for the sake of this story. But that last minute reveal in the finale showed that Rehoboam was capable of thought, of simulating the variables of its environment, which would have been a world's worth of data, and computing that based on Sirach's original goals. And then it literally started telling Sirach what he needed to do and the movement, essentially making Rehoboam, Sirach like a existing outside of its own physical restraints. It's probably not as genuine as the digital minds of the hosts, but I do wonder if Christina in her current system-esque form isn't somehow related to Rehoboam, like maybe even inspired by, like whatever she is inspired by the strategy engine, and Hale needed a host mind to control it, so she used her own, which we know that she does, and that's why the stance was written to write bad stories for humanity, because That was basically what Rehoboam was used for. I'm not sure my exact thoughts, but we do know that Dolores was interfaced with Rehoboam for the deletion process. There is some connection here. I think also the fact that we never saw Sirach die. Also the fact that the opening intro is very much the Rehoboam globe, or, I mean, maybe it's not. It could be the eye of a fly, right? But it could be. I think it's entirely possible that in some form this strategy engine exists, or a variation of a strategy engine exists, and maybe we're seeing the inner workings in the form of Christina's perspective. Here are some rapid-fire final thoughts. The system, represented as Charlie, grabbed the maze and ran with it. Metaphorically, this could be pointing to the system of the sublime itself having some ability of consciousness. Like conceptually, it took the maze and ran with the idea like it had when all of the other hosts had awakened. Then when Christina is talking to Douchebag Incorporated, he asks about her game that she's working on, and she says that the game has not come out yet. It may mean nothing, but it could also be a way that the showrunners are trying to show that her plot relates to the planning phase of something greater and not actually something that's being utilized. It could be a cool play on words after the fact if that is true. Then we have this line from Hale about cutting humanity's paws off because they were bad little billies. And then her plot evolves into her next form for her species literally not having paws. Or arms at all. Also, people pointed out that this robot could simply be the transport system for the host minds. And to that I agree. I don't believe that they would be walking and talking around like this. I think that this is probably some mesh network virtual Eden similar to the Sublime. But honestly, if that were true, why not just put the pearls in a server array to protect them from the very real physics that still exist in this world? I really do believe that this is the form that she wanted them to take based on her moment of reflection with this body. It's like idolizing it. There's going to be conscious, this is what I exist as thought. Lastly, I want to thank everybody that has been theory crafting and adding to the discussion in the comments and over on Twitter. So many comments. More comments this season than ever before, and I wish I could highlight all of them. I just know that we're going to hit 50,000 subscribers before the end of the Westworld season, and for that, I just want to have some honorable mentions. Carly O'Jean, your comments are always so thought out, and you put time into each of them. Thank you for sharing your perspective. KabbalahSherry, same goes to you. Just like Carly, you write short essays about your opinions and perspective of the world, and they have enlightened me for the last 4 years. Also, I'm fairly certain that you have commented more than any other user, like across all of my videos. Your engagement, without any doubt in my mind, has shaped the algorithm's positive reception of this channel and helped new viewers find me. And I don't know. I guess I've never seen a YouTube channel thank someone specifically for that. And I want you to know that you are having such positive impact in somebody's life. So many make this content possible. Even if I didn't shout you out, please know that your engagement is seen. I love that you are a part of the conversation. A special shout out also extends to this month's highest tier donors over on Patreon: Michael Linck, Praveen, Mysore, and the newest member of the Brady Bunch, Brandyn, Fitzgerald. Let's see what the season 4 finale has in store for us. And come Sunday, if our theories don't come true, just remember, that's okay. This isn't our story, it's theirs, and this is all for the fun of further enjoying this really special thing that we call Westworld. So, much love, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon.